Hey, everybody, welcome to the Health Coaches Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Kevin Davis, and I'm joined today by
Howard Jacobson, the other one of your hosts.
Hey. How are you
Yeah,
today, Howard?
I'm doing good. I'm working on some writing projects and procrastinating the hell out of them. So I want to thank you for that.
So you're saying this is going to be an extra long discussion?
Could go days. This is a filibuster. If
Perfect.
if they can't reach me, they can't complain.
That's right. You're tied up. Did you mark yourself as busy on the phone and everything?
Yeah.
Well, so this is going to be easy for me, guys. I'm going to just sit here. Howard's mentioned that he's going to do a filibuster, so I'm just going to sit here and watch him go. So, no, actually today, we're kind of going to take it back to something that we mentioned in the last episode that Howard and I recorded together, which was we talked about the WHAM, and I think we just kind of loudly yelled WHAM and didn't really say what that meant and
Yeah.
moved on.
Yeah. So today we're going to sing "You Gotta Have Faith."
It's going to be a lot of fun. You guys probably should turn off the audio right now. So, so what this is, I mean, this is kind of a way of looking at, or a way of determining what next steps could come as you've kind of begun to work with a client and figure out what they're going to do. You can't just jump in and give them a task to do that has nothing to do. Wow, that's a lot of do's. do. You can't just give them a task of anything at random. There needs to be a purpose in why this person is going to do the thing that you agree upon for the week. So kind of what we're talking about here today, I feel like just helps us to determine what are the steps that are going to actually be productive and move us toward the goal.
Yeah. So WHAM is the WellStart Health Attainment Model, one of the great acronyms of my career.
Yeah.
It was much better than something that I tried to push on Peter Bregman when we were working together. Was it the Bregman Accelerated Results Framework?
All right. That would have been a good one.
Or the AdWords Success
model.
System. So I'm definitely improving my my acronym game. So the issue is, like, what do we coach on? Right? Because someone will come in, they'll have a problem or something they want to achieve, and like a lot of us have been taught that we have to motivate them. Like, the issue is motivation, and motivation is a part. So let's start with a metaphor that, like, somebody wants to go on a trip. They want to, drive to a place. So the first thing, the first thing is, do they actually want to drive there? So if they don't want to drive there, they're not even going to get into the car and go. The second thing is they want to drive there, but let's say the person who wants to go is 6 years old and actually can't reach the pedal, doesn't know how to drive. And
Makes it hard to get there.
Yeah, well, they won't even try, right? I mean, there was that weird story, like a month ago, about a kid who tried to, like, leave home and drive his family's car to California because he wanted a Lamborghini or something.
Anymore,
But, like, if you don't think you're going to do something, you're not going to do it. So there is the issue of, so you have to want to do it, and you have to believe you can do it. At that point, you have to know what to do. So, how do you start a car? What are the buttons for? Right? You have to understand a little bit, enough to know that you have to turn the key in the ignition or hot wire it or something to get a spark from the spark plugs to the engine. And here that's where my knowledge of cars ends. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, but that's enough.
It's enough.
Get you going.
Like, I know enough about cars to drive one. Right. So that's the strategy. Then there's the tactics, right? Do I know what the blinker does? Do I know what the different pedals actually do? Do I know how to gear shift? Right. And so, you can get that in, like, driver's ed. You can watch movies, you can read the manual on how to do it, but that's very different from having the skill, right? Do you remember, like, when you learned how to drive and you knew right, what you knew the strategy, like you want to go straight, stop at stop signs, stop at red lights, turn right, turn left at intersections. You knew the tactics. Okay, this pedal is the brake, this one is the gas. Did you ever like press the wrong one? Like out of
You know, the story that comes to my mind when you talk about like knowing the tactics and the strategy for driving and being really young and learning how to do it is not so much about pushing the wrong pedal. Well, I guess sort of. Not pushing the brake enough and going around a corner and feeling like the thing was going to roll.
uh-huh. See, I was more cautious. Well, I would hit the brake and like people would get whiplash in the car.
Yeah.
Right. So there is skill, right, which is a different thing from strategy and tactics. All right. So then let's say you can do all those, you want to go, you do all those things, and you're driving along the road and you see a restaurant and you stop at the restaurant to eat and you just never get back in your car. You're like, I'm going to live here at the restaurant. This is fine. All right. So that's a question of follow through. All right. And then eventually you say, okay, well, this is, I'm a driver. This is my identity. This is what I do. And so it becomes sort of a natural part. And I know we were discussing before, like we aren't going to share the actual WHAM model, but I think I just did. So yeah. That's okay. Well, if you have the piece of paper in front of you, you can just hold it up for people and they can freeze frame.
Am I allowed to do that?
Go for it.
I could actually attach it to where'd we see if I can get it in the camera there.
There we go. And back a little, back towards you.
Can you read it?
Yep. People can freeze frame right there and get it all. Cool.
Plus, it looks pretty over my face.
Yeah, and that was WHAM without the H. So that was an old model.
Yes, this is from June of probably, what would that have been? 2017 or 18?
Okay. So it's the thing when we start coaching someone, what we want to understand essentially is where do they want to go? Where are they now? And what's the first thing that's getting in their way? Not what's the big thing that's getting in their way or what the thing is that will get in their way, but what is holding them back, stopping them, slowing them down at this moment. And it's tricky for two reasons. One is we forget to ask, right? And it's something that changes. It's very dynamic. So at any given moment, we want to be knowing not only, okay, the person wants to lose 150 pounds and get normal A1C, we always want to be playing the game for the end game of the current obstacle. Whatever level they're on right now, we want to be working towards that. So if someone's problem is skill, we don't want to be working on motivation. And especially if the problem is skill, we don't want to be working on self-efficacy, because the last thing you want to do is give someone false self-efficacy, right? You don't want the 6-year-old to get in the car and start driving because they don't know how to do it.
May not even be able to reach the pedals.
Right. So, and the other reason that, that I can share it is that we see coaches all the time just forgetting. They know the big picture, but you can get really lost in the weeds. And I get lost in the weeds in coaching conversations all the time. Like, I'm not sure what to do in a given moment. So if coaches are watching this and they're like, yeah, that happens to me sometimes. Like, I'm just sort of stuck. Mm-hmm. And that's a good moment to reflect on, where are we in this diagram? What is keeping the next step from happening? So I wonder if you probably have some examples or.
Well, I mean, just like real quick, when you mentioned the idea of getting stuck like that, I it just pops into my head the number of times that we've gone through, especially going through like courses where we're training coaches and we're doing a practice coaching session, and all of a sudden everybody's stuck. I'm like, oh, what do we ask? And one of the first questions that Howard will jump in with is, well, where are they at? What part of the WHAM are we working on? Is the difficulty here that they have a lack of motivation, that is it self-efficacy? Is it just that they completely don't know how to do the thing? And that often, taking that pause to actually consider this is often what kind of breaks through for the coach on, oh, okay, here's kind of a direction that I can take the conversation.
Right. And so the reason this is valuable is that we coaches love to work in two different areas. We love to work on want to and can. So motivation and the trilogy of strategy, tactics, and skills. All right. And so depending on your mood or your training, everything can look like a strategy, tactics, or skills problem. Or everything can look like, well, they don't really want to do it bad enough, so let's remind them, what's your big why? Or tell me what would happen if you don't do this? And there's a place for that, but the longer you're going, the less it's likely. So I'll give a general rule of thumb here. The less it's likely to be a motivation issue, but the more it's likely to be a follow-through issue, where it's just hard to do the thing for any number of reasons. And if we know it's follow-through, then we can explore in that moment. Let's dive in, and what's stopping you? Let's imagine. Tell me about the last time you were gonna do it and didn't, or imagine you're about to do it. What comes up for you? So, for example, if we're taking, someone wants to have a discussion with their spouse about the fridge, right? So the issue is they're eating poorly because of all this food in the house, and especially in the fridge that they, right there, the fridge is full of this food. There's not enough room for the healthy stuff, or the other stuff is just easier to cook and more convenient and tastier and more familiar, and everyone else is doing it. And so we can go around and around with that client on the conversation. But if we look at the WHAM pyramid, the different stages, it could be any, like what I've told you doesn't tell us what the problem is. All right, so
yeah, I was actually, as you were telling that, I was sitting there, I'm like, yeah, let's see, what's going to be the problem for this person?
right, we don't know, maybe,
yeah.
So it's probably not motivation.
Right.
It's probably not, no, I kind of, forget it. I don't actually want to lose weight. My mistake, see you. Right. But if we go to motivation, then we'll say, well, obviously the problem is they don't want it enough to do something hard. And so we pump them up, get them all motivated. And then an hour later, the motivation wanes and they still don't want to do the hard thing. Right. Or they're so motivated that they do it really inelegantly. Mm-hmm. So let's go up one level to self-efficacy. Yeah. They may feel like, Kevin, do you feel confident that you can have that conversation?
I don't know. I mean, it could be tough, and
yeah, I tried to have this conversation once and it didn't go well. Right. So
they don't feel the same way that the rest of the people in the house don't feel the same way I do about those things in the fridge. And
right. So now we know there's a self-efficacy component to it. And the question is, why is there a self-efficacy component? So now we can jump around. Do they not know what to say? Right. It's possible that if you just give them a script, right? Start with this sentence, or here are the 5 points you're trying to get across, right? And we teach at WellStart the idea of the transformation conversation from Change Anything, 5 steps. People print it out. They're very often empowered. Oh, I see how I can have this conversation. There's a great book called How to Have a Good Day by Caroline Webb that's all about how to talk to people and how to talk to yourself in a brain-friendly ways. So she's got all these scripts and things. I love them. Right? That could give me self-efficacy. If she taught me how to criticize. She said, instead of saying, here's what I like and here's what I don't like, you say, here's what I like, and what I'd like even more is, and then the person's like, oh, okay, so now it's easy for me to say to someone, here's what I think you could be doing better. what I'd like more is, and it feels good to say, and people smile, and right. So all I needed was the script, the tactics, right? But you know, and or even just the strategy, and then I can extrapolate the tactics, or I might have to practice it, right? So in that, if it's a skill deficit, like when I'm in the conversation, like I know what to do, but in the moment, I freak out. Just like when I was teaching, my kids to drive, occasionally we roll up to a red light and they slam on the gas instead of the brake because they
Always the safest option.
yeah, just get through that intersection.
Yeah.
No, nothing
Can't hit me if I'm gone.
Yeah, that's a little terrifying, right? But it's like in the moment, they may not have the skill to maintain composure. So in that
Right.
case, the coaching session can turn into a role play. We're going to practice the skill. Very often, I would say 95% of the time in health coaching, the issue is going to be follow through. And the follow through issue is because doing the thing is going to make them face a feeling that they would rather not face, that they would do almost anything not to face and have been doing, the junky eating, the playing video games, the endless scrolling of Instagram, whatever their addictions, is to not feel the feeling that they're going to feel when they have that uncomfortable conversation. Right? And so no amount of motivation or skill is going to help with that. Now the skill is to teach them how to feel the feeling.
Right.
Right? Now the other thing that can happen if it's a self-efficacy issue is, so let's say the self-efficacy, and we see this all the time, that people tell us what they think we want to hear. Okay, I'm going to start exercising. What could I do? I could go walking. I don't need to buy new equipment. It's easy. There's a treadmill in my basement and I could walk outside when it's nice. Great. What are you going to do? I'm going to walk an hour a day. Right? Because we coach, almost everyone we coached was an A student.
Yeah.
At some point, right? So they all want to get A's. And then you check in like, okay, great. When we say we feel good as coaches, like they've really shot, gone for the stars. Great. Well, come back next week. How'd you do? Yeah, I did it. Like, no, I didn't do it. I didn't walk at all. And the issue was, if we'd asked them, if we checked on self-efficacy and said, how confident are you that you're going to do this? Then they would say, and the new language we're using is like, how much would you bet? Right? Would you bet on yourself? Like if it was real money at stake, and then nah, probably not. So then we can say, well, the self-efficacy issue is a matter of scale. It's a matter of they don't think they can do the thing that they just told you that they wanted to do. So then we get to break it down. How about a 1 minute walk? You think you can do that? Oh, yeah. Would you bet on that? $1,000. Great. And then we can figure out what's the number that they would bet on.
Well, and the thing that I would say there too is that we will, may even want to stay at a lower number. I mean, I almost would lean toward a lower number than, it's great if you find just that magic number, like, oh, it's 15 minutes. They're going to do it and they're going to get as much as possible out of it. But I'd rather do 12 than 25 if 15 was the magic number, because we want them to attain that success. And then they're building, even if they do the 1 minute walk that Howard mentioned, they're building some form of self-efficacy because they have accomplished what they set out to do, even if it's a very small thing.
Yeah. Well, it's the Price is Right. Yeah. Right. So you want the person who comes closest without going over.
Yeah.
Right. Or like is bidding in bridge, which I've tried to play once. Right. Like you want to get as close to the right number as possible, but not go over. So it's better to be conservative. Right.
Yeah.
So the thing, like motivation, we're always going to try to motivate people, and people who need motivating don't really need motivating. So I learned this from Peter Bregman. So the difference between motivation and follow through is that motivation is a thinking problem. Right? Motivation requires thinking differently. Follow through requires not thinking.
Oh.
Right? Like let's say the thing you want to do is get up at 6 in the morning and go work out.
Mm-hmm.
So if we work on your motivation at 6 in the morning, okay, what are you going to tell yourself? Why is this important? What's your affirmation? What are you going to look at on, on your phone? What image are you going to have? What, right? Then we're asking them to think. If we say 6 a.m., alarm goes off, don't think, do.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Or alarm is on the other end of the room, so you don't get to think.
Right. And that's why if we say, you got to work out for an hour, it's really hard not to think negative things about that. But if it's for a minute,
Right.
you build the habit of do. Okay, I can do it. I can do it for a minute. And now they're up. And what percentage of the time would you say that when we coach people to do the bare minimum, the ridiculous minimum? Like we've coached people to walk to the mailbox and back. We've coached people to drive to the gym, touch the gym door handle and go home. And the next week to walk into the gym, get a drink of water and then go home. Right. So ridiculous stuff. What percentage of people that we get them to do that actually do more?
Oh, the percent that does more?
Yeah.
Very close to 100. I mean, I have one example in my mind of someone. You mentioned the walking to the mailbox, and I have one example in my mind of someone that I remember that we said that to, and they're like, "Oh, great, my mailbox is a half mile down the road." And legitimately, that was a reasonable distance for them to start out with. So.
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta.
But
gotta
other than
questions.
that, everybody else does more.
Right. My mailbox is on the top of Kilimanjaro.
Yeah.
But okay. So, all kidding aside, like one of the reasons it's okay to share this is that it's hard to do. It's one of the things coaches forget. And it's one of the first places to look. And I really like our taxonomy, but if a coach has a different one, like I'm sure there's many different ways to slice this, many different models. It's not like we have the model. We have a model that feels very comprehensive. We haven't had.
I mean, it's clearly the best.
But, yeah, of course. Well, we haven't had to add anything to it in a couple of years. Like it suffices.
Right. Yeah.
But the bigger picture is for the coach who is finding himself adrift, stuck. What we call like chasing the wallpaper bubble. Like, you have these conversations with clients and they just keep going around and around and you feel like, it's probably a symptom of not being clear on the current obstacle. And that's all I got.
Yeah. And no, I mean, I just think kind of like you said there, if you've got a different model that works, the thing that I think is so valuable is to have something that's kind of in your back pocket that when you get to that point where you're stuck and you don't know what to do, just having something to go to where you can come up with something that's actually valuable, a direction to go in instead of just, chasing whatever little shiny object that comes up. We talked about the follow through and you said, if you're driving to California and you stop at a restaurant and stay there, instead of stopping at every restaurant along the way in their story, if we can actually go, okay, what's going to work? Or what's going to, point us in the right direction.
Right. I also want to caution coaches not to get too fixated on whatever you've come up with, because it will change and it can change moment to moment. Right. So the reason it's valuable is not that it is an infallible diagnostic tool, but that it gets you moving in a direction and uncovers things.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that's a great way to put it, because it's like the conversation, it gives you a way to direct, kind of what are you going to ask next, or where is the conversation going to go, that tends to make it a little easier to figure out what are the actual steps you're going to take.
Right. And also we often find that when we're looking through this lens of what's the obstacle, that there's a time shifting that goes on as well, right? Because the client always thinks that the problem is when they feel the problem. So the example I'll give is I've got I have an office here that's about 25, 30 feet away from my front door. And I teach at night a lot. And I often forget about lighting. so I have to walk home in the pitch dark. I have a flashlight here, but it doesn't have a battery. And I think about the battery every time it's 10 o'clock at night and I have to lock up and walk home and I'm going to walk into the magnolia branches. When I don't think about the battery is when I'm at the store that sells the batteries. So I think the problem is 10 o'clock at night on a teaching night. The problem actually is there's no trigger in my environment, so I lack the skill, I lack the ability to buy the battery when I have the opportunity to buy the battery.
3 p.m. at Walmart.
Right.
Not 10 in your office.
So when we inquire as to what's the sticking point, it often shifts in time as well, and we always want to be helping our clients identify their powerful moments and leverage those in service of doing the hard thing, right? So it's easier to eat a good dinner if you have made a good dinner. And it's easier to chop vegetables the night before than to chop the vegetables and make the dinner when you've just come home at 6 p.m. and you're tired and stressed. Mm-hmm. Right. So
yeah, I keep having the example for me pop into my head of, you talked about having the stuff in the fridge, and that's always a big one for me, is like if I've got whatever dark chocolate or Justin's makes these cashew butter covered cashews.
Justin can rot in hell.
Oh my God. I love that evil. I mean, have you had the cashew butter covered cashews? They're insane. They're too good. But, if those are in my fridge, I'm way more likely to take a handful of those and eat them, or a bagful. And, but like you said, the problem is not, I opened up the fridge and saw those and ate them right now. I mean, that's its own thing. But if I never bought them or never put them in the fridge or never opened them, I've got a couple of bags of those that are just in the pantry, not open, and they can sit there for weeks on end if they're not open. So for me, even just putting something in the fridge, having it open already packaged, where it's easy to just grab a bite of something,
right,
way more likely to do it.
So I think that's a good topic for another one about the critical 5 seconds. Right. Nice. So that people think they have a global problem, but it's usually a 5-second problem. If we identify it. So let's put that on the agenda for a future podcast conversation.
Sounds good. I like it.
All right. Well, I hope this was helpful to folks.
Yeah. New things going on, Howard, that we need to mention. Do you have any thoughts? Anything exciting?
No.
Launched it.
Oh,
we're on iTunes and Stitcher and all that stuff. So.
Oh, I see where you're getting at.
Yeah.
Yes, the podcast is launched.
It is. It's official. It's going. Not just the YouTube, and find us on our website. So we definitely want to thank everybody who's been checking it out. Feel free to tell a friend, subscribe, rate us on the iTunes and Stitcher and all those places where you like to listen. And that stuff really helps us out as we're getting it started. So just to let you know, this week has been kind of, because we're recording this on Thursday, it'll be out on Friday. So this will be episode number 15. So this week we've put out an episode every day just to kind of have a big, exciting launch and give you guys a whole bunch of information and episodes to start with. And then we'll kind of cut it down a little bit and not be quite every day after this.
Right. We want to be special in your life.
Yeah. We don't want to set an expectation either of ourselves making 5 of these a week.
Right. Yeah. And just to be coachy about it, if you would tell one other person that you think would be interested in this podcast, then we would, if everyone did that, we would double our reach, which would be awesome.
That'd be fantastic.
Or you could tell 37 people. But there's probably more of a follow-through success rate with just telling one. So
yeah, and we would be immensely grateful if you would do that. I mean, obviously that helps us out with really just kind of getting a little bit of oomph behind this thing. But our goal here really is to be able to spread this information and help to improve coaching as a profession and help to improve the lives of all the people who are being coached as well. If there's anything that we can do to contribute to that, we'd love to. And one way to do that is if people are listening.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
As my grandfather, who is a Yiddish actor, conductor, band leader, and composer, used to say, you know what the conductor can do with his baton if the orchestra doesn't show up. So we
I thought you were going to say he was a train conductor
oh
with the striped pajamas and everything.
no, he didn't. None of us have ever had an honest job in my family.
Ah, that's all right. That keeps things interesting. Sometime we'll have to tell you about all the fun and interesting jobs we've had.
All right. So we take it out with some George Michael. I gotta have faith, faith, faith. I gotta have faith, faith, faith.
Wham!
All right. See you next time, Kevin.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening.